Lindy Chamberlain was found guilty in 1982, then spent nearly 3 years in prison and fought for 10 years to prove her innocence. Her husband Michael Chamberlain was also charged as an accessory. Even though they were eventually proven not responsible for Azaria's death, too many aspects contributed to the tragedy of this false conviction. These included legal processes as well as rumors spread by the media and public. However, forensic and evidence procedures were the most crucial sources of error and caused the largest impact amongst all of these aspects. Physical evidence is the most powerful tool since it has the greatest capability of providing direct proof. Because of this, the handling and examination of evidence is critical. Unfortunately, due to weak scientific evidence standards, the forensic experts involved in this case did not treat evidence with the necessary importance. Controversial elements in the forensic and evidence procedures occurred many times. These can be summarized as improper evidence handling, wrong evidence assumptions, ignorance of evidence, and inappropriate methodology. The first significant piece of evidence was Azaria's clothing discovered on the 24th of August in 1980. The clothing found consisted of a nylon jumpsuit, booties, nappy, and a white cotton singlet discovered by the tourist Wally Goodwin in the desert near the base of Ayers Rock. The clothing was improperly handled by Constable Frank Morris, the first officer on the crime scene. Frank Morris physically handled the clothing, picking and holding it up to check within to see if there were any remains. After the constable was finished inspecting the clothing, he attempted to lay it out on the ground in a similar manner to how it had been found before photographing it. This meant it was impossible to prove the original state the clothes were left in. The forensic pathologist James Cameron was one of the many that examined the bloody jumpsuit. He utilized spectrophotometry to discern what he decided was the bloodied handprint of an adult on the jumpsuit. This hypothesis by James Cameron was a significant contribution to the argument that Lindy was the culprit, the suggestion being that after cutting the baby's throat, she held the jumpsuit in her bloodied hand. This was proven to be false in 1986 by Justice Trevor Morling. The handprint was actually red desert sand and not blood. James Cameron never verified that the handprint was blood. Heavy traces of bleeding were present on the collar of the jumpsuit. James Cameron, Anthony Jones, and Andrew Scott all believed the bleeding was consistent with a cut throat or injuries to the throat. The singlet found was inside out, inconsistent with Lindy's testimony. Hector Orams, reader in dental medicine at Melbourne University, believed it could have possibly come from the teeth of an animal. On the other hand, Malcolm Chaikin used an electron spectrometer to detect the presence of cotton tufts in the jumpsuit, which suggested that sharp scissors had been used to produce the marks. Similar tufts were found in a camera bag and in the Chamberlain's car. The pair of scissors which was reportedly found in the Chamberlain's car was believed to be the pair that produced the marks on the jumpsuit. Several different traces present on the clothing were investigated. The pH and type of soil on the clothing was consistent with the soil at the camp, but was inconsistent with the type and pH in the area in which the clothing was found. Vegetation on the clothing was inconsistent with the vegetation found at the site of discovery. Vegetation around the site of discovery was also undisturbed. 2 hairs were found on Azaria's jumpsuit and 3 hairs on the singlet. All 5 pieces of hair were believed to be cat hairs. Later it was discovered to be dog hair, which is indistinguishable from dingo hair, but certainly not cat hair. No traces of saliva were discovered on the jumpsuit. The presence of blood was critical to the Chamberlain case and was one of the factors that led the case astray. No blood was found inside the Chamberlain's tent, while a blood spray was discovered outside and on the wall of the tent. Samples were collected but were never tested. Joy Cool, Northern Territory forensic biologist, reportedly found 22 samples of blood from different areas in the Chamberlain's car. In particular, a spray found under the dashboard was believed to be an arterial blood spray. The blood reportedly contained fetal hemoglobin present in infants 6 months or younger. The car was believed to be awash in blood. Further investigation later on proved the car was full of copper-containing dust, a residue of mining in Mount Isa. The front seat had remnants of spilt caramel milkshake, and beneath the dashboard was a spray of sound deadener. This was the blood discovered by Joy Cool. Joy Cool relied heavily on the use of the orthotoledine test, a screening and presumptive test, to detect the presence of blood. She did not do any confirmatory tests to actually verify these results and relied solely on the presumptive test. The reaction of anti-fetal hemoglobin anti-serum to the sample, an antibody-based test, was the basis of Joy Cool's claim that the blood found in the Chamberlain's car contained fetal hemoglobin. All the original test results and photographs of the test before the trial were destroyed. This was normal practice in the laboratory at the time in accordance to standard practices of the New South Wales Health Commission Division of Forensic Medicine. Joy Cool's methodology was extremely erroneous and led to the false detection of blood in the Chamberlain's car. The results of a presumptive test were presented as definitive evidence in court. Anti-fetal hemoglobin antiserum was only meant to be used for research. With a low diagnostic value, it should not have been used in a forensic setting. The specificity of the anti-fetal hemoglobin antiserum was not confirmed. The possibility of secondary specificity was highly plausible and was likely what led to the false detection of fetal hemoglobin. Destruction of records also meant there was no definitive proof of the results. The defense lacked the means to confirm the results for themselves. Evidence of a dingo's presence was never used appropriately during the trial. Photographs of paw prints a few centimeters from Azaria's cot were taken. These photographs were not considered significant enough to be used as evidence in court. Les Harris stated a dingo could have enveloped the head of a child in its mouth and carried such a weight over long distances. He produced photos taken of dingoes enveloping the head of a baby-sized doll in their jaws. Bernard Sims, on the other hand, did not believe that a dingo could open its mouth sufficiently wide to envelop a baby's head. He also demonstrated this with a dingo's jaw and a doll. There were no tracks leading straight from the tent, but a distance away from the tent there were tracks leading towards the dune. The people who traced the tracks were never called to trial in 1982. The discovery of new evidence was the catalyst to the 1987 Royal Commission and the end of the Chamberlain case. The matinee jacket was found on the 2nd of February in 1986 by coincidence due to another investigation on a fallen climber merely 150 meters from the first set of clothing. The matinee jacket matched detailed descriptions given by the Chamberlains. There was a small cut in the collar and 2 holes 1 millimeter in diameter that lined up with damage on the jumpsuit. This led to the acquittal of Lindy Chamberlain. The Chamberlain case showed the lacking standards for scientific evidence. Justice Trevor Morling was very critical and listed out the flaws of the evidence and the experts providing the evidence in the 1987 Royal Commission. These flaws included the use of presumptive test results as evidence without confirmatory tests to verify these results and the failure to use adequate controls with these tests. The use of an anti-serum to test for anti-fetal hemoglobin that was only meant to be used for research and lacked the diagnostic value for it to be used as evidence. The failure to test these inadequate anti-fetal hemoglobin anti-serums before using them to determine if it truly is specific for anti-fetal hemoglobin. The appearance of discrepancies between work notes and laboratory result books, as well as incomplete and inadequate note-taking which led to these discrepancies. The destruction of testing material and lack of photographic evidence of the test results. Further errors were the absence of a system for scientists to cross-check their results and confirm the appropriateness of their procedures. The willingness of some expert witnesses to go beyond the areas of expertise when providing evidence. The lack of cooperation and communication between forensic scientists leading to conflict in opinions. These comments did not just apply to the forensic experts, but the majority of expert witnesses involved in the case. Through the evaluation of the relevant forensic procedures, it is unquestionable that bias pervaded the investigation on the parts of the police and forensic experts. These biases had significant impacts on the case since every decision made in legal procedures were based on these forensic analysis results, which were assumed to be reliable and accurate sources of information and thus overvalued in the case. The combination of unprofessional forensic practice and negligent evidence collection and handling was the major determinant leading to conviction of the Chamberlains.